Hey, so welcome to our third session. So the first two, we had Don Reynolds did humility, and then we had Justin McCall did identity. And those guys, they're all pretty interchangeable, the four guys that I wanted to help do this series. So Marc, thanks for coming, man. I appreciate you showing up, giving up your time. I know wrangling the kiddos and the family and running a farm and growing a sweet ass beard and just being you is a lot of time. So thanks for giving us your time. Resilience, when I was deciding who should go where, I actually started with Marc Tucker here and then just filled in the bookends because that made the most fucking sense. And I think Andrea could probably give a north-south head nod that when people think of resilience, Marc Tucker is probably one of the first names, if you've ever met him, that comes to mind. And I will say this, yes, you guys read his bio, you know, combat injuries in Afghanistan. Resilience to me, though, from Marc is not about the fact that he is someone who is wounded in combat. Those are things that are somewhat out of his control, right? Resilience for Marc is who Marc is as a man and the decisions he made. So to be sort of cliche and jump on the back of the humility and identity, who Marc is to me, and probably to Andrea and anyone else who has known this guy, is a really humble leader who, instead of dictating the identity of the people around him, he really helped them discover it. And I think that's probably the hallmark of a really good leader, is being alongside of you, doing the tough shit with you, being a really good brother and a friend, but not stifling who you are as an individual, but really being a catalyst and a pump instead of a filter for whoever individuals' strengths and identities are. And so I think that segue into resilience makes sense for who you are to me. There's so much more I could go on about, but I really want you to have a chance to talk with the team because, man, given the state of the world right now, I think I'd be remiss not to just highlight the fact that we are really, really blessed and privileged to be able to calmly and without any threat for our lives right now in imminent danger, like have a talk with a great leader like you instead of fighting for our lives. And I'm really thankful and grateful for that deeply. And I hope that everyone that's going to hear your voice can look back and appreciate the time and space that we get to spend with you related to literally the time and space for those who are, say, in Ukraine right now, families that are considering like what's going to go on with my life in the next few minutes as they're staring down the barrel of death. So I think it's not to be melodramatic about it, but just to be real about it. There's a lot of shit that's popping off in a crazy fucking world. And I get to spend my morning with you. And that's a really cool opportunity. So thanks for this, man. I'm going to turn it over to you. And we've got about 49 minutes until we got to drop the mic. And on to you to take this where you want to take it with the team.
Right on. Hey, Josh, thank you so much, man. Those words are definitely kind and you know, wow, I think it's daunting sometimes to hear somebody else's perspective of how you've demonstrated you know, your actions. I think, you know, I would agree with you. The only reason why I'm agreeing with you right now on all those great things you said is because I'm in front of your dudes. That's not me attempting to be humble or to express some type of humility, but you know, I used to use the joke, and I remember being at TBS with you guys and say, you know, you don't know how it is that you behave around other people because you know, we're not weirdos that carry around phones and video recorders and watch ourselves and then play them back, but we live in different times and people do that. You know, they do watch themselves to see how it is that they act and they do those things. I'm just not one of those people. So again, thank you for the kind words, and thank you. You know, I humbly thank each and every one of you from Whiskey Company for taking your time to listen to just an old jarhead like me yammer on about what my thoughts on resilience, you know, what it is. You know, it's not a fixed point by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's something that's a moving target. You know, and I think that it's important not only, and as Josh and I we're kind of working up to this, I've had the pleasure of being able to talk with him and seeing how he's grown and seeing where it is that he's in his life. And, you know, with it being a moving target, I think that it's a lot more apropos for us to, you know, open this up and make it a discussion, man. You know, I mean, I think in my past, I think it would have been easy to try to be a sensei and try to talk about all these like high arching things and ideals and so on and so forth. But what I really love about this forum that you know, your company commanders provided for us is this is an opportunity for us to talk. You know, I'm not in a suit. I'm not in my digi stealth suit, and we're not sitting in a boring ass room with PowerPoint up on the screen, because we all learn best that way, right? It's just people that are sitting around and talking about like what makes them them and what helps us to become better humans, right? Because that's really what it all comes down to. You. Um, so I'm just going to open up the floor and just kind of see what you guys are thinking, man. I mean, again, I'm not prompting you here to like look up. I know snipers are probably have Google open to figure out, you know, what resilience means from Webster. Um, but like just plain speak, like what is resilience to you? And like, what do you want to talk about in this discussion?
Yeah. Hey, Mark. So I also want to say this. So with this is a very inclusive conversation. I don't want Micah, Andrea, or even you remember my other sister's son. He's home alone, like dialing into you instead of doing jujitsu practice, and he's also a jujitsu beast. So Maddox, welcome, buddy.
Nice.
Hey, if Mark opens the floor up, like yes, this is dialed into the NCOs, but hey, like a married woman that's got kids might have a picture of resilience that looks vastly different than what some dumbass 0302 fucking grunt like me with just like, you know, broken bones at this point thinks. So I think these different perspectives actually are the diversity that we're looking at for like, what does someone else view resilience as? So Micah, Andrea, anybody that wants to do it, I think just sort of throw your hand up in the air if you think you want to come off mute. The rest of us will shut up. And if people try to throw you down, I'll mute them because I can do that. So Maddox, what do you think resilience is? I'll let you open the floor, man. You're the youngest dude here, and I think your perspective matters. So we'll go to you and then popcorn it from there. What you got, buddy?
I think it's grit, toughness.
Right on, man. I definitely agree with you. I think toughness is definitely a very, very solid component of being resilient. I would agree with you, my friend. I would. There definitely is a physical component to it. You know, in most instances, and I'm sure the dudes that are over in Okinawa with Josh right now would say, yeah, I mean, it's about sucking it up and putting one foot in front of the other and keep driving on. You know, whether that's in the Marine Corps, or whether that's on the jiu-jitsu mat. You know, sometimes you just gotta, you know, suffer and endure that choke and not tap out, right? So just being tough sometimes is just putting one foot in front of the other. And it really has to do with the physical aspects as well. So yeah, great, dude, great answer, man. And by the way, guys, there's no wrong answers. You know, this is a fireside chat, and thank you again, Josh, for this type of forum. But there's no wrong answers. I don't want anyone to think that like there's some equation or some algorithm that I'm looking for, because I'm not. I mean, I'm a student just like you guys are, and this, if anything, is an opportunity for me to be able to walk away with a different perspective on what it is we're all trying to get to. So thank you so much for your answer. Yeah, it's about being tough, my friend. Great answer.
Mark, if you get silence, you have carte blanche to cold call whoever the hell you want, and that might be a more effective.
Well, my problem is this, Josh, is you and Andrea, you know, you guys explicitly know that like I love to hear my own voice. So if there's no like any type of chatter, I will just keep talking, man. I'll just keep talking and talking, and then you'll be giving me the you know, the hand and arm signal for like wrap it up, dude, because you've been talking for like 41 minutes.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Andrea, you're like one of my dearest, oldest friends, especially relationally with Mark. Give a perspective from like what you've been going through, if you would be so kind, for resilience. What do you think? How would you cage it?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know if you mean personally or professionally what I've been going through, but what's up, sir?
What's up, girl? Hey, had I known, I would have started off with a little bit of and justice for all. Great seeing you. You look wonderful. I'm gonna shut up now.
You too, sir. I actually thought about putting on a Metallica shirt for this, but I didn't. I was trying to keep it professional or something. I don't know.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But so I think honestly, I mean, I would be wrong to say that I've had a better mentor in my entire Marine Corps career. So you and Lieutenant Colonel Shusko were probably the two that I've respected most. And I met both of you at TBS, and I've probably, lost touch throughout the years. But what stuck with me from both of you was that one conversation you and I had when I was pissed off at TBS, and I came to your office, and I was just like, man, sir, like, I don't agree with the way the colonel running TBS is. Like, we asked him questions and he didn't even answer. He didn't answer straightforward. Like, I hate how he answered that shit. Like, it pissed me off. And you're like, yeah, you come to this point in your career where you kind of decide you're going to play the game and you're going to say what people want to hear, or you're going to maybe not promote to the next rank, and you're going to be yourself and stick to your morals. So you embodied that for me, and that has stuck with me since that conversation. And Lieutenant Colonel Shusko, same thing. He ended up getting out of the lieutenant colonel because he spoke up about how he didn't like the Osprey and thought it was an unsafe platform for our Marines, and no one wanted to hear that at the time. So you two have been just like beacons. And that's kind of what I come back to when I'm like, man, is this me? And yeah, no, I'm not for everyone. I know that. And I've definitely learned to speak my mind. So resilience is, like, to me, sticking to what you believe in and not letting anyone else take away your power, because you have a choice in that. Like, every day, it's 100%. You have control over two things: is your choices and your attitude. And you can't take those away from me. So to me, that's what resilience is.
Awesome. Well, hey, Andrea, it's great. It's really great seeing you. And I'm glad you look great. I'm glad you're well. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely, like you had said, just a moral and an ethical. And I mean, at some point in time, you've got to make the decision, what kind of person am I? What is it that I really want to be at the end of the day? And I think, that's part of that, resiliency role, if you will. I think the great thing about the Marine Corps is the fact that, like, I don't know about anybody else, but for me, like, I came to the Marine Corps thinking I knew who I was and thinking that I knew what I wanted to do. I think I had it all figured out, and all I needed to do was just to be tough with other people. And, that was going to help me really to round out and figure out who I was and what I wanted out of my life and who I thought I was. And I think the great thing is that having these experiences with other people, albeit good experiences and bad experiences, because I think that there's value. I remember being at my first duty station, and my Marine Corps career almost ended. Our first battalion commander, who, oh my goodness, was an amazing man. And I remember us being outside as a battalion, in tears, grown ass O3s together in tears as he's leaving. And we got a new battalion commander in, who eventually ended up, and I'm not going to use any names here, who eventually ended up taking us downrange to Kosovo. And, we had a successful mission there. And long and short of it is, this guy talked to his skull ring. This guy could not engage with people. If you were a staff sergeant or below, you weren't allowed to look at him in his office. You had to stand in a position of attention looking out the window. So, like, all these little nuanced things just led to ill communication, to quote the Beastie Boys, if you will. But ill communication, like a poor rapport with people. And I remember, walking out of his office at one point as a Scout Sniper team leader and trying to explain something to him. And, like, he completely blew me off as if I didn't know anything. And I remember being just so frustrated. And so, to make a long story longer, I ultimately said to myself, well, I'm done. I'm packing it in. If this is what it's like, and I'm going to have a terrible leader, I'm not going to learn anything, and I'm ready to get out. And I had a staff sergeant who was a mentor of mine, and a man that I greatly love to this day. For those of you that are familiar with Camp Lejeune, the Ball Center is named after Gunnery Sergeant Terry Ball. who was killed, I believe, in 06. But he sat me down and he gave me the same talk, which was, you know, there's so much value in poor leadership as well as great leadership. You can learn what you don't want to become. You can learn what not to mimic. You can learn how it is that you're going to, you know, cultivate who you want to become as a person and who you want to become as a leader, what you want to demonstrate. And like that blew my mind. And had we not had that conversation, just like we're doing today, you know, again, Josh, with being able to just talk about like real stuff and how this applies, you know, I wouldn't have been able to serve, you know, in the Marine Corps for as long as I had. And I wouldn't be able to ultimately figure out who it is that I am and what I stand for. And I think that that's, you know, such a beautiful thing. And, you know, just really cool stuff. So, yeah, I mean, Andrew, you're 100% right. Just figuring out who it is that we are, what we're about. You know, there's so many opportunities throughout the day, as minuscule as you may think some of this stuff is, whether it's, hey, am I going to go out and police call because the first sergeant said I'm going to? Hey, I don't even smoke cigarettes, first sergeant, but I'm going to shut my mouth and I'm going to pick up the cigarettes. Am I going to go hide behind the beer machine? They still have beer machines at SWAB, right? Hey,
I don't
Josh.
think it's on Schwab, but the Japanese have beer vending machines everywhere, and I think America would be better.
Oh, okay. No.
America would be better for
They-
embracing hot coffee vending machines and beer vending machines.
Right. Well, they used to have beer vending machines on the first floor. I know you got some staff NCOs behind you that I'm sure can roger up on that. When we went to Schwab, you had like Miller Lite and Bud vending machines downstairs in the basement, so you didn't have to go very far. But yeah, I mean, the whole point in that is that yes, there's so many different aspects. We are all students. I don't want to give off the impression, as I'm sure Josh doesn't want to give off the impression at all, that like anybody on this video chat has got it all figured out. You know, we collectively as a team, and I think the HIRT process is awesome, but we collectively as a team, you know, just reading through like the lead up to this, Josh, you spoke specifically about like what HIRT meant and where it came from, you know, its inception and what that means to us. And really, when it comes down to it, being able to be like people that can sit at a fireside chat and talk about real stuff. Because yes, it's very important right now as you start talking about protecting your brother to the left, your brother, your sister, and the left and the right. But it also comes down to becoming the man or woman, you know what I'm saying, that you're supposed to be. You know, and I mean, I'm a Christian. I'm a man of faith. You know, my expectation is not that anybody else agrees with that. But it is to say that like this is a team function. This isn't me alone by myself. And I think frequently where I failed in the past is to believe that being resilient is just being tough by myself alone. Right. You know, that's kind of the expectation that I put in my mind. And as I've learned over the years, that's not what it is. So togetherness is one of those things that allows us to be more resilient. You know, who here?
Yeah,
you know what? I'm gonna
kick it over to. What's your question? I was gonna kick it to one of the other guys, but perfect, good timing. What's your question?
No. Awesome. My question is this: is who's Ira Hayes? Does anybody know who Ira Hayes is?
Yeah, Tyler Nichols behind me's got you.
Okay.
He's from Iwo Jima flag raising.
Absolutely. So wholeheartedly, probably one of the baddest dudes, you know, ever to don the uniform, right? Not to mention, what makes him even cooler is the fact that Johnny Cash wrote a song about him, right? So why is it that I bring up, you know, yeah, it's appropriate. I'm talking about Ira Hayes, a badass Marine, as we're talking about being resilient. But does anybody know the tragedy that's associated with Ira Hayes? How did Ira Hayes die? Does anybody know?
Didn't he drink himself to death and died in a ditch or something?
Absolutely. Thank you, Andrea. The saddest part about it is one of the baddest men that's ever walked this planet and donned the EGA died back on his reservation in his hometown in a ditch from drinking. You know, is this to say that he is not resilient? No, but it goes into what it is that Josh is trying to facilitate here, which is like togetherness, a brotherhood, being able to work through things together, you know, Being resilient means being able to snap back from hardship. We do not do that alone. So it's an absolute tragedy that this man that's given so much for not only, his people, the Indian nation, the Pima Indians, but for this nation, and meant so much, dies in a ditch, So yeah, I mean, I think this I in team and this idea that I can figure it out myself just doesn't work. And we've seen that in the past. And for those of you that have brothers or cousins or uncles, or those of you that served in Iraq and Afghanistan, we've lost so many great leaders because we're either unwilling to talk about this stuff, for fear that people will think less of us, or we're unwilling to make small changes, So I'm sorry. Like I said, Josh, I can run on and on and on, but you said there was a question that was posed.
No, I just wanted to throw it over to Heinz, and I know some of the other guys wanted to just share their perspective. And yeah, I'd say, Joe, for you guys or the guys in the room, whatever your perspective, it doesn't even have to be military related. Just how do you interpret? I think we can keep going with some of this. Like, how do you interpret resilience, and what's an example that you have from maybe a different perspective? Over to y'all.
I'm muting. What's going on, guys? It's Corporal Warren. So what you were talking about actually reminded me of a podcast I was watching yesterday with Pat Mack on the Jocko podcast. And it's kind of like a very similar scenario where like this former CAG dude, like badass guy, just fucking done all these great things in his military career. He got out and was just like scraping the bottom of the barrel, like close to capitulating with suicide. Like he was right there. And I think he brought up like a really good point. It's like we talked about, we kind of define resilience, but like where does resilience come from? And it really comes from like you finding your purpose, like what lights your fire. And he like, especially with like spec ops dudes and just like dudes who are like alpha in general, they have a fucking mission and they get it done. And then you get out, like, what's your new mission? And so I think like finding resilience, you need like to find your own mission. What's your purpose? And what I can only think with like Ira is like he had this awesome career, had such a great like purpose-driven mission, and then like what's now? Like what's next? Like if you don't find your what's next, you're screwed.
Hey Warren, that is absolutely awesome, dude. Take $5 out of the soda mess and take the rest of the day off.
All right.
Yeah, good to go. Absolutely.
Just to tag on to what Corporal Warren said, I completely agree. What I was going to bring in wasn't exactly military related. Last year, I finished a book. It was called The Art of Resilience. It was by Ross Edgley. This dude used to run triathlons with a 100-pound log, and then he just finished swimming around Great Britain as a world record. He did 6 hours on, 6 hours off, never touched land. But mainly what I got out of the book, he talked about like how he built up to it. Resilience is really just a scalable thing. Like you don't have to go out and swim around Great Britain, but you can do it with any sort of steps, whether it be here, like if you're not in shape, walking 3 miles, I don't know, anything. But resilience and I think discipline go hand in hand, because motivation will get you so far, it'll get you started. But if you don't have the discipline, you're not going to be able to build that resilience to actually get to your goal. So I think the best part of our resilience is that it's scalable to everybody. You don't have to be some sort of jock or whatever it be, whether you're studying for law school or you're just trying to get better physically. It's just scalable. I think that's the best part about it.
That is an awesome point, man. And what a wonderful caveat into the fact that I think a lot of times, I think it's very easy as gunfighters to talk about, like you had said, this is your point, it's not mine. It can be applied to anything, but it's so easy for us to apply it to, well, hey man, maybe I'm not running a 300 PFT anymore, or maybe I'm not running an ultra marathon. But when you think about it, man, like when it comes down to it, where else in my life am I choosing to either not be resilient, or I'm not giving it the appropriate care? What am I doing to grow those other facets of my life? So if we look at ourselves as beings, and all of you guys seem like well-educated and well-read, but there's different components to us. Obviously the physical, which I think is the most appropriate, especially being a gunfighter. But you know, there's other aspects of ourselves, right? So there's, you know, the mental and emotional and the spiritual aspects, right? And so with those, I think it's very easy to show up day to day and run a 300 PFT and freaking look good in uniform and to do all these things. And I don't know about anybody else, but when it started coming towards the end of my career, I had to shuffle the deck. I had to shuffle the deck. And in that, I mean, it was soon becoming a very, very approachable reality that, guess what? When my time was up, right, I'm going to be stuck with this woman and all these kids that I had on deployments. And guess what? They have no idea who the hell I am. And I have no idea who the hell they are. And, you know, at the end of the day, that can be a scary ass place. You know, I can come to a place with other men and women, and we can leave and we can participate in, I think, what's been described as the most exciting experience of your life, whether that's, you know, running and gunning down the streets of freaking Fallujah or what have you. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know how to function within my own network at home, you know, and that's a very real thought, you know. So how have I been resilient with regards to my own family? Is there anybody out here that's married? Yeah. I mean, hey, I don't know about you guys, but for me, and I'm going to speak on my experience, it's easier for me to like understand when you give something to me in a 5-paragraph order and you understand what you know, PCCs and PCIs are, immediate action drills. When you get the coordinating instructions that are associated with everything, I can talk to you and we can have a discussion. But when I go home and my wife is talking to me about other things, it becomes challenging if I'm not willing to work on those things, if I'm not willing to understand where she's coming from, you know? So when we're talking about resilience, you know, being resilient and being present when you can in your own life is something that's huge. Making time for your kids. Anyone have kids? No, not yet. Well, I'm telling you, just hold. Yeah, oh, there we go. Hold on to your seats. You know what I'm saying? Do you want to, if you want to ever see all of your character defects wrapped up in something that is young, poops themselves, and moves at like 1,000,000 miles an hour, have kids. You know, all those things that you don't like about yourself, you'll see them and they will poop themselves and they will run around and act crazy. You know, the funny story real quick is I remember my wife said to me, I've been out of the Marine Corps for, I don't know, a year or so. And my wife looked at me one day when I came home, because I used to disappear and just go do my super cool stuff, right, at work. So now I'm left with like having to like help raise these kids. And my wife looks at me exhausted one day and she goes, you know, honey, in my next life, I'm going to screen the genetics of my husband. And I'm like, why is that? She's like, because your kids are animals, you know? And so the reason why I bring that up is that, like, yeah, you can, for me, I could look very put together. I could go into every situation with the understanding that, like, I knew what the answer was. You know, whether it be a brief, whether it be a mission, whether it be whatever. But when I got home, things got a little weird. And things got weird because I wasn't doing the development that I needed for myself in order to be a more resilient father and parent. I wasn't doing everything and listening to the needs and doing the things I needed to do as a husband or as a citizen. But if you look at my fitness report, right, I'm at the top of the Christmas tree and I'm providing because we're getting choice assignments, because I'm getting selected for school, because I'm moving on and I'm getting all that external information telling me that I'm doing all the right things, when in actuality, I'm not taking the time to really sharpen the blade with my wife and my kids, who ultimately are the ones that I'm going to be, you know, together with for the rest of my life. So, you know, I don't know. For me, it really has just been important when we talk about resilience, is just looking at you know, areas of my life that maybe I'm not so great at, you know. And due to the fact of you guys sitting in Okinawa right now, well, that's time and separation away from, you know, your loved ones, right? So just taking the time, whether it be with your kids or your wife, to just grow your relationship, you know, being able to figure out who it is that you are. You know, when I joined the Marine Corps, my wife, my wife was a beach bunny that grew up on the beach surfing in a bikini, right? After all the deployments and all the kids, man, I came home to realize that she was a grown ass woman. Do you know what she needed me for? Absolutely nothing. That was shocking. And it was shocking because I didn't take the time and make the effort to really dig into the relationship and make it as strong as possible. So, yes, it comes in many, many different forms. What's up?
Hey, Marc,
I'm
I'm
starting
gonna-
to talk too much.
No, you're good. I'm going to kick it over to one other group, and then I want to transition shortly because the guys read your bio, presumably, or if they didn't, they can hear a little bit about you, but I think most of them probably did. There's a very unique aspect, like I framed up at the beginning. Yep. A lot of who you are and a lot of your story from your combat injury and tying into something I'll mention shortly, I didn't even know from you, which I think speaks a lot to the humility of who you are. The story of Marc Tucker, I didn't know past the surface level of what I could physically see, from like a Purple Heart on his chest at a mess night, or, you know, his arm with scars from like his radial bone getting blown out. Okay, I can know those things, but the story of how didn't happen until I talked to crazy fucking Manny. And he was like, I saw him down in Coronado at rapid response planning process, the R2P2, before one of our MEUs. And there's this little short dude, and I was like, you're short, you're probably a tanker. I was just cracking a joke. I didn't even know who this guy was. He's like, actually, I am a tanker. I was like, no shit. I was like, do you know Marc Tucker? Like, just threw it out there. And the tone changed from sort of funny, jovial, poking fun at each other to Manny Ramirez going like, that is the baddest motherfucker I know. And hey, sir, if you got a couple minutes, you said, you know Marc from where? I said, well, he was my staff platoon commander at the basic school. He said, hey man, come over here for a second. Let me tell you the Marc Tucker I know that he will never tell you about. And I won't even go into that story, but I think it speaks volumes to the humility of who you are, the purpose that you had around other people. Yeah, you might say, hey, I like to hear my own voice. That's just you being cliche. But in actuality, I appreciate you being transparent on areas you struggled. But I would say, man, the areas where you modeled a good example of a leader and trying to stifle down the things that were out of your control and the things where maybe others would lift you up in success, you push that down in order to invest into other people. So that means a lot to me. So I want to kick it over to like one other group, get their perspective. I'm probably going to cold call one dude specifically because I think he's in a cool transition phase where the trend I keep hearing without even having to say it myself is a lot of the resilience talk keeps landing. It's playing on the runway of identity and what's my purpose. And I think the guys from Snipers made some great points about, hey, where motivation might give you a cool feeling momentarily, discipline will actually carry you through to your desired future state of what you want to be as a person. You won't be motivated, inspired all the time, but you can be fucking disciplined. And that's probably a really good attribute to marry into being resilient. And that's what I think of when I think of you. So there's one guy, he's our chief scout, Brian Stack. And I'm asking him specifically because he's been really diligent and under the radar at work and stuff. He wants to go over his brothers with NSW as a SEAL. He wants to go over and try his hand at the MARSOC gig or get out and try some other things. But I think maybe getting him to vocalize and voice some of the things for the way he views resilience, tethered to who he is and who he wants to become, might be useful for him to just air that out and get a little bit of crosstalk with you. And then when he's done, I would ask you to just shortly frame up like a little bit of your story, specifically the things that were out of your control with your injury, but like the resilience that it took, not really to bounce back. I don't believe we fucking bounce back from everything and anything in life. I think we actually just have to press through. Like resilience is pressing through. Bouncing back says like, I'm here. And then, yeah, okay, something happens. And then I'm back here again. Like, hey, no man steps in the same river twice because he's not the same man and that's not the same water, right? So I think that mindset of like resilience is actually pressing through in an ever-changing environment. That's you to me. So Brian, over to you, man. Like when someone says resilience off the cuff, what comes to your mind? What ideas and emotions does that conjure up for you?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, just like when I kind of think of resilience, especially like the past year going through this whole process of like put out this screening checklist and all that. like nonsense. Just like the setbacks, they're gonna happen. You just like if it's something you really want to do, just having that like that mindset of like these things are going to happen, but being able to bounce back, be like, whatever, okay, what's the next step from here? How do I continue to keep going forward and ultimately get to my desired end state? It's a pretty short answer, but like I think resilience is just like being able to roll with the punches and take what happens in stride and just continue to move forward and keep going.
No, man. I mean, what matters the most, I think, when we're talking about this stuff, guys, is understanding that, like I said before, there is no right or wrong, man. Hey, man, the number one question, the first thing that I would ask anybody, man, is what do you want to do? And it's rhetorical, because I have to ask myself that all the time. I think I've got in my mind what I think is the right thing to do. But coupled in there with what I think is the right thing to do, I also look at my strengths and my weaknesses, right? So I've got assets and deficits. Just understand that there's so many deficits that I've used in my life that have helped me. So in turn, they were deficits, but they were assets. And in that, I mean this. You're probably kind of like, man, this guy's talking to me in riddles, right? So I wrestled for 13 years. I wrestled on the national team. I earned a full wrestling scholarship to college. I came in the Marine Corps. I did some really cool stuff. And in all those instances, I was always very, very successful. But at some point in time, and it wasn't until after I got out of the Marine Corps that I had to really sit down and really take a look at like, who am I, right? If you would have asked Marc Tucker 10 years ago, hey, who are you, man? It's very easy for me to come off the grip with, oh, I'm a Marine. And it wasn't until I got a mentor that said to me at one point in time, he's like, no, dude, that's what you do. Who are you? And so that prompted a very important question in my head. And if I'm being honest with you guys, I got no idea who the hell I am. It wasn't until taking the time to sit down and really figure out what's what that I really come to grips with the idea as to not only what I was doing, but why I was doing, right? So why is it that I could be, a pretty good wrestler? Well, I could be a pretty good wrestler because based off of my past and having a very tumultuous relationship growing up, I could visualize, things like my father in front of me. And guess what? I'd kick the shit out of most people I came in contact with. Hey, when things got tough, during the Sniper Indoc at Camp Schwab, how did I get beyond that? I got beyond that because I could use trauma or I could use things to incite me in order to get me to where it is that I wanted to go. So when do assets become deficits? Well, guess what, man? When my wife tells me to unload the dishwasher, getting angry the same way I do in the hunt for a state championship, well, those things don't correlate. If you guys understand what I'm saying, I can use all that stuff to be very successful in other parts of my life. When it comes down to just who it is that I am, I've got to figure out the wheat from the shaft. I got to figure out what's positive and what's negative, what I can use and what I can't use. And if you spend so much time within the same circle, you're always going to end up saying the same things. Now, I don't say this to like talk you into a circle, and I don't say this to say to you, hey, your want and desire to go off and do marksok is bad. I don't say that at all. Hey, brother, if that's what you want to do, be on the tip of the spear, be a gunfighter, be exactly where the rubber meets the road. Hey, man, do that. But what I charge you with is knowing why you're doing that. Are you doing that? You said, I think Josh said you have a brother that's a SEAL. Are you doing that because that's just what the boys in your family do? Are you doing that because that's the next logical step? Are you doing that because you want other people to admire you and look up to you and say, man, this guy's a badass dude? Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to turn you away from anything, man. But what I'm trying to say is start off at square one, man. Like, who are you, dude? Where do you want to be? What's important to you? I think all too many times that I know I've done this most of my life is I don't know necessarily where I want to go quite yet. And there's nothing wrong with that. But as opposed to playing the field and saying, these are what my options are, it's very easy for a guy like me that was retiring out of the Marine Corps to say, you know what, I'm going to take that contracting job making, $300,000 a year. Why? Why is it easy if I'm being honest with you? Well, it's easy for me because, hey, I can get back on a deployment cycle. I can be around people that think the same way I do. I'll be around people that I spent time earning all this like respect from in uniform. But now you call me Mark and I can put in earrings and I make a bunch of money. I can be away from the family that I would then have to get to know. So there's all these things that are really enticing, and a lot of them have to deal with my ego. Your ego's not a bad thing. Your ego keeps you alive if you're getting chased down by a bear. So I'm bringing it back to full circle as to, hey man, there's nothing wrong with sitting down with somebody that you respect, another man, and saying, hey man, I don't necessarily know why I'm doing this. Or, hey, this is why I think I'm doing this. Do you think I'm doing it for the right reasons? And then taking the time to reflect with yourself, man. You don't have to fit into some box that somebody puts out there for you. And I'm not saying that's what the case is. But I know for me, I got to know who I am, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and is the juice worth the squeeze? Have you thought about this? What do you lose if this is what your chosen path is? Are you married? Okay. You got any kids?
No.
Okay. So, hey, maybe there's nothing to lose out on that front. But there are quite a few gunfighters out there that have wives and kids and say, you know what? I'm going to go to selection and I'm going to be gone more. And they're okay with that. And good for them. But at the end of the day, you've got to, Grandma Critchfield, my grandma Geraldine Critchfield. She said to me at one point when I was like 7 years old to sit down and write a pros and cons list as to why I want a rhubarb pie versus a cherry pie. And I thought that she was completely out of her damn mind. And I sat down and I wrote the pros and cons. And I came to the conclusion that I wanted to eat the rhubarb pie that she had grown in her garden, the rhubarb she had grown in her garden. And, that taught me something, man, is that I have to weigh the good and the bad. I have to not necessarily put my mind so far in the future that I can't enjoy what's going on today. But I've got to take the time to look at both sides. So best of luck for you, man. If selection is what it is that you want to do, I would highly encourage that you just get to know why it is you do the things that you do. What are you motivated by? What do you want to achieve by this? And furthermore, what do you want to do with it further on down the road? I had a mentor of mine say to me, man, he asked me at one point, he says, I'm about to retire from the Marine Corps. And he asked me what my valley was. And I was like, what are you talking about, dude? It's one of those mentors that talks to you and you're like, man, I don't know where he's going. But he said, what's your valley look like? And I'm like, okay, man, I'm a pretty educated dude. What are you talking about? And he's like, okay, man, what's a valley? And I was like, well, no, he says, what grows on hilltops or on top of mountains? And I'm like, nothing really. And he's like, okay, so where's the fertile land? And I was like, the valley. And he's like, okay, dumbass, what's your valley look like? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, what do you want to do with your life? If you could do anything you wanted to do, what does it look like? And I'm ashamed to say that having had 20 years in the Marine Corps at that point, having had all these different experiences, I had no idea that completely untethered to anything, I could decide what it is that I wanted to do. And straight up, brother, like, since I've retired, man, I'm figuring out what it is that I want to do. Josh told you guys, man, I've been a pig farmer for the last like 5 or 6 years. So going on this voyage of figuring out who it is that I am and what I'm about, man, it's just been so impactful. And I'm not saying you should be a pig farmer. I'm just saying is get to know who you are and what you're about. What is it that you want to contribute? Shit, it was 3 years out of the Marine Corps that I looked at one of my buddies and I said, hey, man, you know what? I really like cauliflower. And he was like, well, congratulations, jackass. I like cauliflower too. And I said, you know something? I hate flying midair. It's just janky. I always feel like I'm going to die when I crawl into a military aircraft. Now, that sounds rather innocuous, but like, These are things that I would never let myself know about myself out of fear. So I'm taking the long way around the barn. And the purpose in all that is just to say, get to know yourself, man. Because when you know yourself, everything becomes pretty clear. Everything becomes very clear. When I don't know myself and when I'm relying upon that information from other people and I'm relying upon other people to celebrate me for something that they want me to do, well, I end up getting resentful. So my greatest piece of advice is figure out who you are, do it, and enjoy it. I love every day I get up, man. Every day I get an opportunity to try to become a better man, to help grow my kids, to help be a member of my society. In a lot of ways, that just means that, I'm doing what every human being should do. So, yeah, I'm not going to take up all the time, but I'm just going to say to you, man, sit down and write down where you want to be. Maybe you don't know, and that's okay. But remain inquisitive, man. Does that help?
Guys, yeah. Thank you.
Oh, right
Hey,
on.
Mark, I'm gonna,
Yeah.
so we have 6 minutes left and we are on a tightrope of timeline today because the rest of these knuckleheads don't look comfortable like me because we got to jump over to command and staff shortly after 8. I wanted to frame something really quick and tell you about it. I think I shot it to you, maybe not. But in the construct of everything you're saying, and I didn't say this up front because if people watch this or don't, it's sort of irrelevant to me. This is for the team. But to let you know, not everybody, we sort of did an open-ended, whoever wanted to do it. We're doing 2-7, so we're doing a 27-mile ruck run or ruck crawl or whatever the fuck they figure out they want to do for 27 miles with 27 pounds. But I think it drives to the point that some of the guys from what snipers were saying, we got 21 dudes doing it. And even before this morning started with you, there were dudes that were up before 04 doing today's training ruck because we have a training regimen every week and we're going to do it. The so what is not to say, look at what we did. I told them, like, just shut up and show up is what we're going to be doing for this shit. Put in the work. We have to put in the work or you're not going to be a part of the thing. And the thing is for nothing for themselves. It's raising money through GoFundMe for Semper Fi Fund because Semper Fi Fund is who you introduced me to because of your story and help you and Sarah and the family press through. And like I said, like, yeah, gnarly injury in Afghanistan, man. Part of the reason why you're not dead and why you were just injured is because you were disciplined enough to check the right things. And ironically, the stars aligned to where, like, your arm was where your fucking head should have been, is a fact. And then on top of that, and I'll just share this from like what Manny told me because you probably won't say it, so I'll just put a bow around it real quick. So this dude's like gets his radial bone blown out, about to bleed out, and in his tank, his FAC is freaking the fuck out from blood. And so Marc is showing him, hey man, no, you need to move my tourniquet up a little higher, I'm gonna bleed out. As he calls in his own Casevac 9 line, as he's repelling an enemy assault from an ambush from a fucking blast. So things Marc wouldn't tell you, but Manny told me because Manny was like, I was right there. And it was mind blowing to watch, cool as a cucumber, a guy that knew who he was, that he was there for other people. And he couldn't control the shit that had just happened to him. But I think post-injury is more impressive to me of the man you've become from like being really resilient enough with the family to really grow your relationship and to know like what you just said. Who do I want to become outside of uniform? Am I going to be like, oh, I'm a wounded combat vet? And that's very honorable, man. Like, you know, I love you for everything you've sacrificed. But in our generation, that's a dime a dozen. And it's actually not that wowing to me, to be very blunt and transparent, to see Purple Hearts everywhere. Like, I'm thankful for that. But sometimes guys maybe have a Purple Heart because they just didn't know how to train their guys. And so they threw their guys in shit they shouldn't have been in. Let's be real. So a wounded combat to me doesn't equate to necessarily a resilient man. The actions following things to me, it's way more impressive to watch guys that overcome adversity and keep pressing with a team and a family and a community around them. And so because of that, these guys have been putting in work. I was trying to keep up with our chief scout and our fucking platoon sergeant all morning before I dial into this because they were breaking my face off on a ruck for 7 miles and crushing it. And I say that like, as I was out there, I was like, what a perfect way to start a morning for me. I saw numerous other teams like passing each other on our little course here on Schwab. Hey, what's up? Good morning, sir. And it's like 4:15 in the morning, and there's like over 15 dudes out there in their little pods of 2 or 3 getting their ruck in because no one told them what time. We just said do it Monday or do it on Friday, and they're like, fuck it, we'll do it before we talk to Marc because now it's done. I really latched on to just the discipline comment for resilience, and I'm really thankful that these guys and this team have embraced that, and that not even talking to you about it or not bringing it up to you, but like you are really the impetus of why we're trying to raise money for a great organization that helped you out. Because I was like, well, fuck, if I'm going to think of resilience, I'm thinking of Marc, and who was the organization that came by his side. Why don't we just do a thing to help them help other people along? And I think that investment that's not for a, oh my God, we did a 27 miler with weight. Do a hard thing and then fade into the fucking black and don't say a fucking thing about it. And let someone else be better because of it. And to me, I think that is the imprint and the DNA that your mentorship left with me, that our conversations had. You would look at me and say, hey, Josh, people are going to tell you, bury the former staff sergeant and just be this polished fucking officer. He said, you know what, man? You can't bury over a decade of leadership. You always reserve a right to fuck a motherfucker up if you need to. Do it. Do whatever your identity tells you need to do in that moment. And that is where I say you didn't dictate, you helped discover and develop. And that was much more impactful for people like me, for Andrea, for anyone who's had the privilege of just spending time with you, man. So I'm going to sort of give you the mic, give you like 2 minutes to drop it off for the team. But sincerely, thanks for your time this morning, man. We got about a minute left. I'll let you close it out. And then I really value your time that you spent with the team. Over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Hey, this is where it happens. This is where the rubber meets the road. I mean, I know Josh just keeps on prompting me to talk to you guys about, Afghanistan. And yeah, I mean, that was an instrumental part of my life. I can tell you this is that, again, I'm a believer myself. And what I'll say is this I think it's interesting. Josh, you had said something about, just the wild number of Purple Hearts and this and that and so on and so forth. And really when it comes down to it, I think people kind of cage that in a box and they say, oh, well, that was the most terrible day of your life. And let me assure you guys of something is that was not the most terrible day of my life. That was the most beautiful day of my life. And it's taken me many, many years to figure that out. Part of that has to do with the fact of, I think that was the day that I really kind of got my calling, that there's a greater purpose to things and a greater understanding, just within the whole idea of a team. You don't know how much people love you until your ass is bleeding out all over them. You know what I mean? Yeah, but just a wonderful day. And I think from that allowed me to turn so many corners, and to eventually become the man I am today. It woke my ass up. I was a dumbass that used to think that I knew everything and that I could answer everything. And if I didn't know it, I would just say, no, this Marine doesn't know, but I will find out. As opposed to just saying, I don't know. I think from that one instance, I've somehow that, along with the tutelage of other men and having these fireside chats, has helped me to become, a good father, I think, a good son, a good steward, and just as Josh was saying, being able to give back, like not wanting the accolades, be able to fade back in the shadows, just knowing that I had just given whatever it is that I had. You can't transmit what you don't have. And the cool thing is being able to transmit that, and for people to grab onto it and latch onto something and to do something with themselves, and it's not my responsibility to ever hear what the impact is. I think the most effective leaders that I've ever seen have drastically changed my life in so many different ways. But something, they didn't give me an email address and say, hey man, write me and tell me how great that your life turns out based off of what I've told you. Just the art of giving of oneself, expect nothing in return. You know, I had one of my mentors say this, and I'll end it on this, Josh, is I had one of my mentors, as I was telling him how much humility I had, was like, do something nice for somebody and don't ever tell anybody you did it. Well, for a guy like me, that's hard because I want people to know that I'm a good guy. But you know something? If my words match my footprints and I'm doing things for the right reasons, people will already know that I'm a good person. And that ties back into just knowing who you are and why you do things. You know, and that's pretty cool. You know, lastly, you can't do it yourself. I can't do this myself. You can be as tough as you want to be, but you can't do it yourself. Apply your strengths to other people's weaknesses. You know, you ever thought about that? Apply your weaknesses to other people's strengths. Help somebody out. You know, it all comes around.
Thanks, my brother. All right, man. Hey, we're about to sign off. Appreciate your time. For all the team here in Whiskey, Andrea, Micah, Maddox, great seeing you
Hold
guys.
on, I got to give a shout out to my daughter who just won her first Virginia State Championship this past weekend.
What up, girl? Get it.
Yeah.
You're a beast like your daddy.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Mark, we love you, brother. Thanks for your time, man.
Absolutely. You guys take care. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Bye.
Take care.